Okay. Let's see. Okay, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about spatial. We're going to continue the discussion on spatial monopoly, and we're going to talk about monopolistic competition. And I'm going to go over a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about. I want to talk a little bit more about this model, the natural monopoly model. I want to go over, because one of the things that I want you to be able what I'm trying to teach you here is to start thinking about strategic behavior. Strategic behavior and the analysis of strategic behavior is a very, very important part of economics. Modern economic analysis is more. A lot of analysis involves the study of strategic behavior, and so what we're talking about here is a model that considers the strategic behavior of the participants. It's very simple, but this is just a very basic model that I want you to do that. So what I'm going to do first, I'll talk about this in just a moment. I just want to open, and one of the reasons in talking about this is, as I say, modern economics is more and more involved with a kind of strategic behavior kind of analysis. This week you may have seen the Nobel Prize in economics was awarded. And this year's winner is a fellow named Richard Thaler, who is an American economist who teaches at the University of Chicago. And he is a pioneer in the field of behavioral economics. He's received his PhD for his studies of the effect of biases and misconceptions on economic decision making. And so one of the things that in our models, we tend to do is we assume that people are rational and that they process information correctly. In other words, that they bring in information from the world, they see that information correctly, and they respond in an optimal way. And so what Dr. Thaler, his life work has been is that in many cases, it's important to consider the biases and misconceptions that people have on economic outcomes. And there are many markets where, in fact, there's what's called asymmetry of information. There may be asymmetry of information or asymmetry in knowledge. A very good example, people that take out loans for compare the people who lend money for housing, the banks that lend money to people who borrow for housing, the people who borrow money to purchase housing for private housing for their own use, not professionals, but for private individuals that are purchasing for their own use. There's typically, the people who do that are not necessarily very sophisticated, and in many cases, and the thinking that and this has been a problem in the US, is that you have, and you had the problem last decade, was that people were making very the structure of the loans that ordinary people were taking when they were borrowing to buy homes was very complex, and they were not sophisticated enough to understand the product that they were purchasing. So they were those misunderstandings, or what we call misconceptions, were causing them to have to basically pay too much to purchase real estate that in fact they couldn't afford to buy. and some other effects, you have biases. People have certain kind of biases about the world that may not be that may not have a basis in reality. An example that Dr. Thaler was interested in, he was looking, many people, and this is particularly the case in the United States, less so in Japan, because there's more of a culture of savings, but many people in the United States don't save enough for their retirement. They have a belief that they're going to work longer, or they have a belief that the return on their investments are going to be high enough that they don't have to save as much. And in many cases, these are biases that reality is very different. So he had, in one case in his work, he devised a savings plan for a company in order to encourage the low-saving employees to increase their savings. Basically what he did was a real-life experiment using his economic ideas, and it turned out his idea, his incentive worked. He created an incentive program to help so that people could overcome people that were, the assumption was that the low savers were biased, that their perception of the future was biased, that they weren't correctly looking at the future, and because of that, he created a savings plan to so that they could overcome their bias and save more money. So that's the kind of, and I'm pointing this out to you just to give you an idea of the kind of work that's done in economics, the kind of problems that people are interested in, the kind of things that economists are interested in. This is beyond what we're going to talk about in this class, but I just want to introduce you, give you an idea of some of the things that are out there. Now, I've been thinking a lot about the, as I said, about the strategic behavior. One of the things, one of the students was talking about some of the work. I've been looking at the models. One of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to maybe to push a little bit and to find out what you can learn, what you're capable of learning, and maybe to see if, to try to maybe teach you some things that some people might think are a little bit advanced, but maybe you can understand the concept. So I do a little bit of experimenting myself, and to see how much to try to do that. And one of the things that I do is I try to take the simple concepts that you're being the basic concepts, and to try to do some modeling to get you to start thinking about how to actually use these concepts in order to develop your own economic ideas. So this goes back, what I wanted to do was talk about the, in this chart, which by the way I used as a template, what I gave you last week. So I used that and just typed the values. That's how I got this, this table. So I just used the template that I gave you in your, gave you last week to make this chart. But this is a chart of the two firms. So the two firms and what's facing each of the firms in each round. And I said in the first, this was the demand curve that firm 1 was facing in round 1. This was the total demand curve. They were facing the total demand curve. These numbers show the average cost. So if you recall, you've got as the production increases, there's a continual decline in the average cost. So we have a continued decline in the average cost. And what I'm showing here, for example, is here, if the firm produces 1 unit of the good, the average cost is 75. So 75, and at 75, it costs 75 units to produce 1 unit of the good. The market price would be 39. Clearly, the firm is losing money. So the revenue is 39. The marginal revenue is 39, and the average cost is 75. Okay. So like here, the marginal revenue is 35, and the average cost is 15. So the firm is earning a profit. So you can see the profit here, 30 and 7.5, so that means it's producing 10. It produces 10, the fixed cost is 75. 75 divided by 10 is 7.5. So this firm is a monopolist. They have market power. This point in the yellow is where they maximize their profit. So they maximize their profit. They produce 20 units of the good at a price of 20, and their average cost is 3.5. So that was a firm in round one. They have an average price of 3.5 because their optimal choice is to produce 20 units of the good. They're monopolists. And they have an average price of 3.5. And then round two, what I'm showing now is on this graph, is the demand curve that the second firm faces in round two. So this round two is not the full demand curve, it's this part of the demand curve. So when we move it over, it looks like this. And now you can see, there's 2 units of the good is 37, the average cost of producing 2 units of the good is 37.5 for firm 2. It's this 37.5, and the price that firm will receive is an average of 18. So the average cost of production is 37.5. Its average price it receives is 18. So if it produces 2 units of the good, it loses money. So that's how you can read this chart. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm showing on the demand curve to show the average cost that each firm faces at that level of output. Now you'll notice here 15, that's output of 5, average cost of 15. It's the same 15. So it's the same average. The two firms, if they produce the same amount of the good, they have the same average cost. So here, the monopolist, firm 1 is a monopolist. Firm 2 has a market power because they also face a downward sloping demand curve. They maximize their profits at an output of 10, at a price of 10, that yellow, that's their optimal point. Now you can see it's the same average cost as firm 1, but firm 1 was able to produce 20 units at an average cost of 3.5. Firm 2 produced 10 units at an average cost of 7.5. So their average cost is now 7.5. Their average cost is 3.5. So now we recall, firm 2 had to drop its price to 10. Its price drops to 10 because now that's the market price. But remember the difference, it still produced 20 units of the good, it gets a price of 10, and its average cost is 3.5. So it's there, its average cost is 3.5. Firm 2's average cost is 7.5 because it enters the game later. It has a smaller market to pick from. Its average cost is 7.5. And an important thing to note here is the most, let's say the firm 2 produced 15 units of the good at an average cost of 5, at an average production cost of 5, and a marginal cost, and a marginal revenue of 5. So the marginal revenue is 5, and the average cost is 5, which means its profit is 0. So it can't produce any more. That's the maximum that it can produce is 15. It couldn't produce any more than 15 units of the good. But firm 2 has an average cost of 3.5. Okay, so we can see this is the optimum. Firm 2 makes its best. This is the best it can do. It makes that. So firm 3 goes into firm 1 goes into round 3. And if it produces 2.5 units, if it produces more than 2.5 units of the good, then its average, if it produces 2.5 units of the good then the market, this is now the demand curve facing firm 1 for the additional demand. It already has 20, but for the additional units, this is its demand, the demand curve that it faces. So it sees this demand curve in round 3. If it chooses to produce 2.5 additional units, then its total average cost drops to 3.33. The price is 7.5. So it's earning a profit. But at this price, then firm 2, its average cost is 7.5. The market price is 7.5. For the remaining market, if it increases its production, its profit is now 0 at this price. So what happens is if firm 1 produces more than 3.33 units of the good, then the market price is below 7.5. So if the market price here is below 7.5, firm 1 is still, its cost is still less. It's a little bit more than 3.2. It's a little bit less than 3.33. And the market price is a little bit less than 7.5. So it's earning a profit. But firm 2 earns negative profits. So if firm 1 increases its price, increases its output more than 2.5 units in round 3. I said 5, and that's correct, but it's even if it's 2.5. So it could produce as little as, say, 3 units, or 2.6 units, additional units, and force the other firm to lose into negative profits and force them out of the market. So that's what So what I've made this diagram so you can understand to better understand the strategic behavior that's facing the parties. So you can see in this situation, firm 1 knows that firm's 2 average price is 7.5. So if it reduces the market price below 7.5 and it still has profit, then it's impossible for firm 2 to stay in the market, because they can't, if they reduce they can't reduce their output. If they reduce their output, then the market price goes up. If they reduce their output, the market price goes up. They're trapped. The market price goes up, but and their average price goes up faster than the market price anyway. And if they increase their output, then they're losing money. So they're in this range, above that range, they're out of the market. So that's the kind of thing that I want you just to look at, as this kind of strategic behavior. And I'll probably give as an extra credit, and as I say, an extra credit because I really would like to see all the students in this class. I'd love to be able to give all of you AA this semester. I'd love to be able to do that. So I'm going to give you some extra credit that will, and the extra credit here will be to say, I'm going to give you some price and say, well, is there a price where is there a fixed cost where the two firms stay in where they're both in the market? Is that possible? Is it possible? And to use a diagram like this to look at the strategic behavior. So this will help you to understand the strategic behavior better, and to do that. And as I say, the reason why I'm giving you these kind of problems, because to understand strategic behavior, to be able to think strategically, is very, very important. Not just in economic analysis, but if you're going into the real business, any kind of business analysis, financial analysis, You people are here because you want to be analysts of some sort or another. That's why you're in this class. You're interested in analyzing things. That's why you're studying. That's why you're here. So, I'm exposing you to this kind of strategic thinking because this will be very, very practical use. Whether or not you become an economist or whether you go, some type of analysis, it'll be very, very practical for you in your career and after graduating. So that is a natural monopoly. I'm going to move to a discussion. I introduced this topic the last time. I'll go over this very quickly. I've talked about the location of households. This is market power and spatial competition. So we're interested in competition in space, where there's households are locate along the line, and I looked and I showed you, and we discussed this, went through this, the very simple, a basic model that talks about the demand, how the demand at each point varies with the distance from the location of the provider. So if it's a retailer, some type of retailing, some type of activity, the further you are, it could be, let's say for example, another example to make this to realize how real world this is. Let's say you have households located along the line, and there's a park here, and you want to know, well, what's the probability of people using the park? Well, for the people further away from the park, they're going to use it less. So their demand for the services of the park are less than the people that are closer, because the cost of getting to the park, that is in walking or biking or taking a bicycle, is further. The further away you live from a park, the less frequently you go there. So it's the same kind of, it isn't just necessarily retailing, it could be something like that. So I've shown you just how to think about that, to think about that your demand equation at each point is different. So your demand is different. And so this is a more, this talks about a real world, the idea in the real world that distance matters, that distance from something to something matters, and the further away you are from that something, the lower your demand, because the cost of getting there is higher. So that's the basic model here. And I want to give you, and I went through this, and I showed you the result was that for this optimal location, the optimal location in this case was just located right in the middle, which is not surprising. You have along the line, there's equal weight at each point. Everybody has the same income. The cost of movement is the same. Locating in the middle. That's not a surprising outcome. But at least mathematically, you can show it. You can show it. You can understand mathematically why that's the case. Now I'm going to talk about a real world example of spatial competition. How competition exists in space and how it takes place. And I'm going to talk about some grocery stores in my neighborhood. And I say this because this is just something, this is an example of spatial competition that's going on, and the drama and the battle of spatial competition that's going on right outside my door in my neighborhood. And this is something you can find in your neighborhood. These are things that you can look for. Your neighborhood may have this kind of competition, and this kind of thing goes on out there in the real world. These are two grocery stores located in my neighborhood. I'll show you where they are in relationship to where I live and the neighborhood as a whole. This is an Eon store. This store to the right has been about 3 years now. No, more than 3, about 4 years. It is about 4 years. Yeah, about 4 years. This store went in about 4 years ago. Until the store went in, there was nothing. We had no shopping within a 10-minute, no grocery shopping within a 10-minute walk. It was very inconvenient. So when this store came in, it was wonderful, because now we had a store on our block, didn't have to go very far. But also other people in the neighborhood were coming quite a distance, because it's the only store for quite a wide area. Well, what that means is that we've talked about this location in space here. That means there's spatial competition, but it also means there's a spatial monopoly. So to a degree, this store had it had some market power. Check. Okay, it is. This store had market power, and the prices were okay. I mean, but they basically the store's prices are probably generally a little bit higher than some places, because they have a monopoly. They had a monopoly, and you could get special. The specials were basically on special days. You could get prices that maybe you could get at other stores, but that were a further distance away. But you had to go on certain days or at certain times, and you had to do certain things, and you had to use the card, and you had to do all this stuff in order to get those savings. But they were a bit of a monopoly. And we talked about spatial monopoly. In a certain area, you have a certain market power. They had market power. Well, another store at this site, until about a year ago, there was a Papa's pharmaceuticals, a pharmacy. Yeah, the Papa's chain of pharmacies, and they would have a mixture of some groceries, some medicines, medicine products, the kutsuri, the actual pharmacist. They basically had they had a lot of different things, but nothing that anyone really wanted very badly. And so the thing was your pharmacy. There's many different pharmacists in the neighborhood, so people had no reason to go there in particular. There's lots of pharmacists. You just fill a prescription, and everything else they were selling. There was no connection. There was no special reason to go there, and they closed. It wasn't a good location. It didn't have parking. It didn't have car parking. And they closed it, and it sat empty for about a year after they went down. Well, then in the summer, this OK chain went in. Now this chain. Now the interesting thing is, let's take a look at the map here. Let's see. Can you see this very well? Let me turn off the light just so I want you to be able to just to show you here. Here's the neighborhood. Here's the Eon Max Value Express store. It's right here. Here's the scale. That's 50 meters. So you can see 50, 100. Here's the OK Supermarket. This was the store, and you can see all of this area. All of this area, they had no competition. There was no competition and it way up. Quite a ways up. There's convenience stores. There's a convenience store, for example, right there. There's a convenience store there. There's a convenience store there. But the prices are lower. They weren't really competing. Convenience stores aren't really competing with this store. They're providing something different. Convenience stores aren't competing on the basis of price. They're providing services. And you have this is a My Basket. If you look around the Eon, they have something called different size stores, and the smaller stores they brand as My Basket. The My Basket brand, and this is another Max Value Express. Then they have regular Super. They have different brands depending on the size of the store. Prices here are a little bit higher, fewer goods, a little bit higher. It's kind of a little bit more like a convenience store. This is a little bit like a supermarket. Well, and this shows that this market range extends probably somewhere here, and then this had pretty much a monopoly in all this here. Right? Well, then this store comes in. This store is okay. They come in right there, and that's the store. That was the picture was taken in August. I got it off of Google. You don't have to go out and take pictures of anything anymore. It's all on Google. Everything's on Google. There's no reason to even have a camera, you know. So when I needed photos, I just went to Google Earth or Google Maps and found that they had photos of it, and I just downloaded the photos. It's amazing. So at any rate, they come in right in to compete. They come right in. Now, the interesting thing is you got this park right here. Remember what I said last week about what happens if you have a store next on a beach? A store on a beach, and half of your if you have a shopping center, if you have a supermarket or shopping center on a beach, half of your market are fish. Half of your market are fish. Now, in this case, half the market are the birds in the bark. It's just, you know, they don't have. But this was fine because they didn't have any competition. And now suddenly this store comes in. Now what's interesting, this has parking. This doesn't have parking. It's a lot smaller. So what are they doing? They're very aggressive pricing. It's very aggressive. I mean, it's basically, it was much lower prices. They came in, they started lowering the prices. They 20%, 30% lower in some cases. I mean, it's really aggressive. And what's very interesting, it's a little store, but they have so many people. Remember when I had the problem last semester where I had you to calculate what's the optimal number of part-time workers to have? What's interesting, this store has so many they put so many people on the checkout. There's so many, there's more than what you need. There's always somebody waiting. And so they have so many people in the checkout that even if the store is crowded, you don't have to wait in line. So they serve you, you get through the line just as if it's a convenience store, but it's got aggressive pricing. And I assure you, from the day, when this store opened, the next day prices started falling. The prices started they started cutting. You could see certain things they started cutting, and they would kind of say, well, let's see what we can do. It's not working. The pricing model in this chain is much higher than this chain. And I was just, I go to these, well, now I go to this store almost all the time because the prices, and I'll show you why, and another advantage of location, of location. But I went to both of these stores yesterday. I went to this store, there was one person shopping, and it was in the middle of the day, about 2 in the afternoon. There was one person that was at the checkout counter. The whole store was empty. Then I went to the other store 5 minutes later to get something else. It was full. It was crowded. Not as crowded as usual, as later in the day, but there were a lot of people. Everybody's going to this store. It's the example of spatial competition. What happens they cut the prices. Remember what I said earlier when we were talking about where people are irrational? But many of our models where people are rational make sense. And when you go grocery shopping, people are very rational. People know prices, they know what things cost, they buy things every day, they're very sensitive, the demand tends to be very elastic, and they're very sensitive to price. These people know it, and they provide great service. It's fascinating because it's such a little store that if they didn't provide great service, it would be crowded. People would leave, even if the prices were low, and they'd go shop at the other store. But the service is incredible. It's a great model. I love the model. It's just the seeing this kind of business strategy. The whole. I mean, this is not a business class, but I just really admire this kind of business strategy. It's just great, fantastic management of a company just to watch it happen. At any rate, that's what happens in competition in space. And every time I go, the prices are lower and lower. Week by week, they're cutting more and more prices, but they're not cutting them low enough. And so you're getting the kind of situation where, say, you've got the one, maybe they were here, and then this firm came in there, and they've got very low prices, and they're just undercutting them. It'll be very interesting to see if the store survives. Very interesting. Now personally, where am I located? Well, this is a close-up now. The immediate neighborhood. I'm right here. That's my building. My building is located right there, right between the two stores. So I'm basically, in space for me, it's like I'm the household 4 at 0, and I got a store here and a store here. I got 2 stores, and literally 2 stores. Now, what's interesting about that, and let me, and I want to make this example because I want you to watch out for these kinds of opportunities, and I'll give you sorry, is that okay? You want me to keep that off?
Yeah. No.
Oh, she disappeared. That was magic happened. Now you'll see, I'm almost equidistant. I have to walk around the court, so it's a little bit further. But I mean, you're talking, this is 10 meters. That's 10 meters. That's my building, 10, 20, 30, 40. It's
Almost.
50 meters. It's 60, 70 meters, I'm in the store. And then this way, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, maybe 150. I mean, 2 minutes. 1 minute, 2 minutes. In other words, it's almost 0. I don't care, even if I'm busy, I have time to go to either store. So I'm in a situation now where I have 2 stores, and I can just go to whichever store has the lower price for whatever item. Now, does anybody do you know what the word for that is? Can anybody tell me what's the word for something where you can take advantage of price differential at 2 different locations at the same time? What are you doing? You're a finance. You're kind of a finance guy. It's called arbitrage. That's arbitrage. I can arbitrage the prices. I go to item 1. That's an arbitrage. That's arbitrage.
Yeah, you can choose.
I can choose whichever one, whichever day, whichever one has the lowest price. I go and I buy that product at that store. That's arbitrage. That's what arbitrage is. So this is the kind of thing you should look for examples of. That's an example of arbitrage in just day-to-day life. I have to, when they have sales on the one, I go to that store. Certain products they put on sale and they discount heavily because they're trying to draw people into the store. And they draw me in to buy that product. And then I go to the other store to get other stuff because they're so close anyway. It doesn't, it doesn't matter. That's arbitrage. I'm arbitrage. I'm taking advantage of the price differential between 2 locations. Two locations, and whether you're doing that in the stock market, or or in the buying, shopping for groceries market, it's the same thing as arbitrage. So that's just an example. What I'm telling you is go out. That's just in my neighborhood. That's right. This is going on in my neighborhood. Go out in your neighborhood and see what's going on out there. See what's going on. You might find out, these kinds of battles, these kinds of competitive battles are going on, you know, all over the city. There was an opportunity. They were in a monopolist. They saw an opportunity. They brought in a certain kind of business model that was the right model to compete with that in that location. Because they didn't have parking. It's a smaller store, so they had to come up with a strategy that would enable them to compete on the basis of price and to get flow through and to get volume. To get the volume that they needed in order to justify the low prices, to get the volume. So that, as I say, and it's an example for me, if you live further away, no. If you live further away, you're either going to go to this store or that store. You probably won't go to both stores because you won't have time. You'll choose one or the other. But for myself, I'm right in between the two stores. I can arbitrage. So these are things. Look for these examples. The world is full of things that are related to concepts that you're learning in this class. So keep that in mind the next time you go shopping. Now I'm going to just briefly, I may talk more about this later because it is an interesting topic. It's the in the input markets. We've talked about an output markets and monopoly. Well, what is monopoly power on input markets? We don't call it monopoly. We call it monopsony. But what it means is a monopoly on the input markets. A monopsony means a firm with market power in an input market. And they're most commonly found in labor markets. Your labor market is your most common form of monopsony. And what causes a firm to have market power? That means if they have market power in their labor market, that means they're not a price taker. Price taker means that it's the supply doesn't, that the price of their labor, that the cost of adding an additional worker doesn't change. It's each unit is, they face a perfectly horizontal supply curve, labor supply curve. But if a firm is a monopoly, if they have market power, they face an upward sloping supply curve, which means the more people that they hire, the higher the wages they have to pay. So the more they hire, the higher the wages they have to pay. But so because of that, because they have upward sloping supply curve, they face an upward sloping supply curve, they have an upward sloping marginal cost curve, and a downward sloping marginal revenue product of labor curve. So the marginal revenue product, that's the marginal revenue. That's the marginal revenue of relative to adding a worker. And here's the marginal cost of the worker. So you set marginal cost equals to marginal revenue. That's here if you have market power. And you get this output. And because the supply of labor, that may be the marginal cost, that's where you maximize. But the amount of labor is on this curve. It's nice, huh? If you're a worker, this isn't so nice. If you're the employer, then this is nice, because what happens, you paid a wage of 7, you're hiring fewer people, you have to pay a lower wage, and here's the marginal revenue is 13. Marginal revenue is 13, marginal revenue product of labor is 13, your marginal cost is 7. If you're in a perfect competition outcome, it's here. Because that's where, if your marginal, your supply curve is flat, so that would be the price of labor under perfect competition, it would be here. And you'd have to pay a wage of 10. The firm would have to pay a wage of 10, and they would hire 10 units of labor. But instead, they're hiring 7, and they're only paying 7. So the wage is lower, the output is lower, the wage is lower, but they have profit. net profit. And this is the loss, the labor, what's called labor surplus loss. So in the same way as consumer surplus, this is labor surplus. So that idea. So this is, I just wanted to introduce this. This is something that's out there. We'll probably we'll talk about this, the labor market, a little bit more later. But I just wanted to introduce this idea that these things can exist at the on the input side as well. Now I'm going to move to a discussion of monopolistic competition. And monopolistic competition is one of my, I have many favorite topics in economics, and certainly one of them is, or topics that I like very much. And I like, I always find monopolistic competition an interesting concept, because what it is, this is a form of competition that is very much, it's the most common kind of competition that we see in market economies. The most common kind of competition that we see in a market situation, in market economies, is what's called monopolistic competition. You say, well, it's a monopoly. What does that mean? It sounds like it's opposites. It's monopoly and competitive. How can you have something that's both a monopoly and perfect competition? So it's a mixture of the two. And what it is, industry structure, the following characteristics. First is a large number of firms in the industry, but each one has market power. They have market power because the firms it's achieved through product differentiation. So it's achieved through product differentiation. And no firm is large enough to influence the market price by its size alone. And firms are able to enter and exit the market relatively easy. And in fact, this is a great example. This is spatial competition, but it's also an example of there's some monopolistic competition going on in this example, where the stores are they're trying to differentiate themselves. They have they're trying to find where they have different prices and different approaches. So the key term here, the most important thing here is the term product differentiation. Now, the monopolistic competition, the industries produce goods that share similarities but which differ in some way from firms that are produced by other firms. For example, like that there. Here's, at this location, there's the supermarket, but there's a convenience store too. There's a convenience store. Now, the prices are lower here than here. Right now they've driven out, this firm is trying to figure out how to compete in the new market and without upsetting their business model with their other stores. When I walk by here to go to this store, there's always people here. There's always people. It's open 24 hours a day. There's always somebody there. But the prices are really lower there. But people go there. Well, there's got to be a reason. The prices are higher, but it attracts people. If you were, let's say you want to buy something to eat and to cook it right away, they're set up for that. This store isn't really set up. It's not as. I don't even know if you can do it at this. You can do it at this store. I don't know. It's too. It might even be too small. It's just there's no space for it. There's always people there. They might be buying magazines. They might be buying other things that they don't sell there, or there's a certain kind of convenience. There's a little parking space, so some people will drive this. That's product differentiation. They're selling the same, but not much of it's the same items for a different price. They're selling convenience. They're selling convenience. It's open 24 hours a day. But as I say, I walk by, there's always people there. So they're, I mean, even though the prices are lower here, they always have customers. That's product differentiation. Product differentiation allows you it gives you some market power. Obviously this 7-Eleven has some market power, even though the prices are higher for many of the goods. So they have market power. And the market power is through differentiation. They're providing a different set of services. Maybe you can go in there and pick things up, Taki Bean, or drop off stuff for Taki Bean. Little differences. That's called product differentiation, and that enables you to sell things. So that is the that's the central detail. But I also want to talk about monopolistic, competitive markets. I want to talk some key other concepts that are important, that are key to understanding the dynamics of monopolistically competitive markets. One is diminishing marginal utility, the source of a potential advantage for product differentiation. If I have a little bit different product, it's a little bit different than this store. Maybe when people get tired of this store, they'll come to my store. That's what restaurants. A row of restaurant, you'll go in an area that has a lot of restaurants. Well, maybe if you go to this restaurant and you go a certain number of times, you get tired of it, you're diminishing margin. Then you go to that one. You try that because you got tired of that one. That's because of diminishing margin utility. The existence of diminishing margin utility. Division of labor. The ability of human beings to learn specialized capabilities enables the production of differentiated products. Because people can come up with different products, they can come up with slightly different. They see that store does this shop, well, they produce something different. And I'll give you another example here. Go back here. And let me shut this off again. So, that's a coffee shop. It's my building. It's a very well-known coffee shop, Old Press. People come from all over the city to go there. The Blue Bottle. People are coming from all over the city to go there. Here's another coffee roaster right here. There's one right here. There's a cafe there. There's another coffee place, of the similar type just there. The neighborhood's full of it. It's full. Like I say, you've got this one and this one. They're almost right next to each other. But they're doing something a little bit different. This guy roasts. This is a little bit more conventional. As a big store, this is a little shop. This guy's very boutique. He does very specific, very artisan coffee. They do kind of the same thing, but I think he's a little bit better there. Then they do something a little bit different here. People pull up in expensive cars to hang, and the neighborhood's full of it. How can the neighborhood support all these coffee shops? I mean, it's full. But the reason is because there's the neighborhood has become the neighborhood has become well known for these. People come from all over the city. It's like the Ginza or the Motesando of coffee in Tokyo is this neighborhood, my neighborhood, literally. They're coming from all over, and I assure you they are. But they're all a little bit different. It's all this high quality, a little bit different. That's product differentiation. So that's what people can do. That's the division of labor. Spatial product positioning, the ability to position a product in space. And that's what we mean, it's either physical and or perceptual. So we're talking about product positioning. Okay, it could be physical. I'm going to put this product at that location. If it's restaurants, you know, they'd be next to each other and they've got different products. Or it can be product space. And I'll give you an example of that. And this is one that you can go right out and right down to the corner and see an example of this. And I go through this here, and you can see it right. Let me go through here. That's spatial product positioning. Now I took this. This is now it's a couple of years old, but I think it's quite. This gives an example of handbags. Okay, different handbags at different prices. Okay, now you look. This is that's about 6,000 yen. You know, 12,000 yen, 25,000 yen, 140,000 yen, 260,000 yen, 500,000 yen. Way too much yen. Way too many yen. I mean, you know. But they're all handbags. If I stick something in them, they'll all hold whatever it is that I put in there. And obviously these are women's handbags, so whatever the user that puts in there is going to, you know, if I put, you know, if I put onigiri in here, or I put it in here, it's still going to be an onigiri. It's going to taste the same when I take it out, but you know, whoever has this bag feels differently about walking around with the onigiri in the bag. You know, but this is the point is that each one of these, they're very unique, and they're basically, it's individual to the user. The person who buys this is expressing something. The person who buys this is probably younger. Maybe they use it very casually. This is day to day. This they may use this to go to work. They may use this when they go to Motesando, or when they go to. And this is if you're out, you know. Yeah, I mean you're Daikanyama or something. I don't know. You know, or you're going. You know, these are. In other words, people are going to be using these for different things, different circumstances. You know. There's different purpose. It's this product differentiation, and because there's product differentiation, they're all handbags. You don't put things in them, but they have different prices. They provide the same service. That's the thing to remember. They're just handbags. You carry them, and you put things in them, but they have different prices. That's product space. Different product space. And because it's different, there's different product space which satisfies different demands in the market based on income, age, sex, you know, where you live, all of the, you know, where you work. Your space and your demand, a certain individual's demand is somewhere on this line. You know, a young person, this is where their space is, their demand is here. Their household, they live on this, in this neighborhood, in purchasing this product. If you're very wealthy, and you're gonna, this is probably a diamond studded or whatever, and you're gonna go there. You know, you live in this neighborhood, but it's really just product space. It's not physical space, it's product space. And this is a very important distinction. These are things that matter in you know, these are the kinds of things that this is a great example of monopolistic competition. This is what monopolistic competition is. Because each one of these, get out. You want to see monopolistic competition? Go walk out there. It's right out the door here. You want to look at monopolistic competition? Walk to the corner. Go up and down the street. Omotesando Dori, go up and down the street and you'll see it. It's all there. it's there, and you want to study it. You want to study this after class. Go walk right out there, and you can see it. It's right there. So the next time you go, that's what you want to do. You want to go out and look around and see what's going on. Well, why do you have a Louis Vuitton next to a Hugo Boss, or and all these stores that are all right to get together? What's going on there? Well, part of it's monopolistic competition. There's also some other factors. We talked about that a little bit last semester. That should bring as to why those stores cluster. But and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But I just want to talk diminishing marginal utility and income constraints. Diminishing marginal utility says each one of us has likely some demand. But our income constraint means that our actual demand for a number of goods based on our income is zero. Even if I wanted a 5 million yen handbag, even if I really, really wanted it bad, I can't afford it. I can't go out and I can't afford to spend 5 million yen on a handbag. That's not happening. But even if I really wanted it, because my income's not high enough to afford a 5 million handbag. This is a situation where here's some potential monopolist, somebody that can potentially provide a service. They have this average total cost curve, but here's the demand curve. This is a case of insufficient demand. There's not enough demand in the market. The demand curve is to the left. It doesn't cross. It doesn't touch. So what's the amount of what's the amount the market supplies? Zero. At that demand, it's zero. Now that could be because for a lot of reasons, and one of the things, this is the demand is too. Here it says here demand is too small at any price consumers are willing to pay for firms to supply the goods to that market. That's what's going on in this diagram, and it could be the size of the market. This could be a neighborhood or small town. It could be too small. It could be the size of the market. Now, if the market is a large city, and if the size of the market is a neighborhood, it's entirely possible that the good be to slide to the city market if all households in the city have access to that good. Well, let's go back here to my neighborhood. As I say, this is a neighborhood. And all of these, go back to this. All of these, the neighborhood is way too small to have all those coffee shops in one neighborhood. This is way too small. There's no way that these coffee shops can operate. This is just a regular neighborhood. That's the thing. This is a regular neighborhood. It's kind of East Tokyo, a little bit industrial. You've got the canals and the whole thing. That's it. I mean, it's not that, it's not West Tokyo. It's not Daikanyama. It's kind of a little bit, a little bit industrial and a little bit, but it's full of these. But it's not the people that I go there. I'll go. We go to this place. That's a pretty cool place. And he's quite a character too. If you ever go there and tell them that I said hello. He'll see me anyway. But he'll probably there's some gaijin guy describing. Oh, I know that guy. And he knows what coffee I like too. He knows what kind of coffee I like. That guy's good. But I'm saying this is the kind of special. These are specialties. They're specialists. They're differentiated. They're specialists. They're providing and it's not for the neighborhood. People come from all over. You can just see tourists. Tourists are coming to our neighborhood to drink coffee. It's amazing. There it is. But here is, and getting back to this division of labor and market size. I said what limits the size of a market, the transaction cost of moving a good from firms to customers, or the cost of customers traveling from the location of the firm to purchase the good. which is the case of my neighborhood, for people who are actually traveling to the neighborhood. In that case, what happens is the demand curve is shifted far enough to the right. It's high enough, that means it's shifted far enough to the right so that it intersects. It intersects along, and what happens? Well, here's the average total cost curve is below the demand curve, which means this is a profit. That's the price the market's willing to pay. This is the cost. That's profit. So there's some, if you are a supplier, if you're a retailer or some supplier of a good or service, and this is your cost curve, your average total cost curve, and this is the demand curve, you are somewhere in here, you're maximizing profits. Somewhere in here is your profit maximizing point, and this is all potential profit right in here. And that means your market is big enough. Now, it's also important to remember that if it's big enough, well, firms can come in. I mean, coffee shops it's coffee. You know, I mean, you can have specialties, but it's coffee. So people can enter the market. It's possible for anyone to enter the market. I wanted to give an example here. This is, and it's a good example in terms of just the overall. We've talked about some real world examples, and this is another one that whether or not that's going on in your particular neighborhood, it's almost certain that you have this kind of dynamic in your neighborhood, and that is convenience stores. The competition between convenience stores. What's that noise? Okay. The competition for convenience stores is one every neighborhood in this city. If you live in this city, this competition is going on in your neighborhood. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and see how this works. And one of the things, and you say most convenience stores more or less sell the same goods for more or less the same prices. They're all kind of sell the same stuff for the same prices. So they're not necessarily, as I say, remember we talked about the luxury fashion retailers, they're all clustering. Convenience stores don't cluster. It's not like you travel to a neighborhood to go to a convenience store. Your convenience store is convenient because that's what makes it convenient. It's in your neighborhood. And so what that tells you is that while the Omotesando, the Louis Vuitton and Gucci and all those people, they're clustering because they're attracting customers and they're monopolistic competition. The convenience stores avoid each other to a degree. They avoid each other. And so you say most convenience stores are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 or 366 days a year. Well, how do they differentiate themselves if the customers have more or less the same experience? Well, what's the differentiation? It's location. It's only they may have little differences. They may try to sell, a little bit different thing, or they have their point system and all that silly stuff. But it's how many people go. Well, that's not none. I mean, sometimes, for example, I have my card and my WOW card, and I can use it to get discounts in convenience stores, and I'll buy a certain product. I'll do that. But it's for the most part, what the price is, and you're going there to buy some. You're there to buy a certain thing, and you're just. And if it's this store right here or the one across the street, well, you go to that store because it's closer. You're not going to bother crossing the street because they sell the same thing. So these stores avoid each other, and that's what we're going to do. Is we're going to look at So in this case, if the potential market, if the two stores are next to each other, then it's possible that both stores might fail. So I'm going to look how 3 convenience stores might locate along a line in the 7 household space that we talked about earlier. Same space, now we've got 3 firms. We're going to look at spatial competition, how the firms might compete for space along that line. And then now back to my neighborhood. And again, I mean, it's where I live, so I'm giving you this example, but you have your neighborhood, you can go out and this is going on out there as well. This is, again, that's where I live. There, you can see from the other map, it's pretty much the same. These are all the convenience stores, in about a 10-minute walk from my home. Look at all those stores. And some of them are, some of them are clustered, but they do tend, if you look, even the cluster, they're kind of, there's a regular spacing. There's some kind of spacing to some degree. This is, avoid each other. This is a kind of the center of a shopping area, and these aren't really quite the same. One of them is a Hyakuan discount store. Another one's a regular convenience store. What is that? Let me try to remember. So even though there's little differences, there are little differences, but many of these are just regular convenience stores. These ones are just those are just regular convenience stores. So you see that kind of regular spacing. If you go out and you do this in your neighborhood, you'll see the same thing, and I might ask you to do that. And go out and look around. I know when people. The thing is, when I ask people to do that, they go to Google Map rather than walk around. So they go to Google Earth or Google Map, and then so I don't know how much they really learn. I know this because I've walked around my neighborhood. I know all these stores. I know where they're all located. And I know the different things about each of the stores because I walk around a lot. That's what you should try to do, is not rely on going to your going to that, and it's because you always learn more by going and actually looking. There's always more to learn by looking. Then you kind of get a feel. You're getting more information. You see what's really going on. At any rate, there's that kind of regular spacing. So we see that in the real. We do see that in the real world. Now let's see. And then, as I say, this is what happens for luxury fashion retailers. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just go back, because this is the point I was trying to make. Was that's that regular spacing. That's what convenience stores do. This is what luxury fashion retailers do. Is they cluster. They cluster as close together as possible because people are comparing. They're comparing things. They want to be able to compare more easily. That's why you go to Motesando so you can compare. You go to a convenience store because you have something ordinary day-to-day that you want to buy. But this is because there's something special and you're looking for something. You might not know exactly what you're looking, and so you want to go to different places and see the different things that are for sale at those places. And see which one you might want to buy. Here's an example, a Ginza. These are just some of the, and it's probably changed since I did this map. This is a map of kind of boutique stores in Ginza. Here is the Yonchome, that's the Wako, the Yonchome Kosaten. Right here, the main crossing in Ginza is right there. Yeah, this is probably. I think this is. There's been some changes since. This is probably different. This might not reflect the reality today. But you walk around, and this just gives you an idea. These are all these kind of boutique fashion stores, kind of brand name. That's what these are, kind of brand name stores. Many of them are international brands or famous domestic brands. And you just see all this cluster. This is a big cluster. I mean, look at the number of these stores. This is monopolistic competition. This is truly an example of monopolistic competition. You walk around, and why? They're selling similar products. These are similar, but they're a little bit different. Each of the products, each store is selling something a little bit different, and you're going to walk around to see which one you really want. And it's all on display. You can go online, but somehow it's a different experience. Somehow this is still, even online, people want to go to these places to see and be seen. There's a social aspect to it, getting out rather than sitting and looking at this all day long. It's that's of course now people go and they're doing this anyway. I don't get it, but I'm sure you've walked around Ginza. You see, it's the same thing. Monte Santo is exactly the same. So I'm now going to give you a numerical analysis. Now it's kind of another kind of game. We're going to do something that's kind of similar in terms of a game. We're going to look at firms that are, we have about 13 minutes, firms that have market power, and we're going to look at their locational behavior, and we're going to have two firms that are located at either end, and we're going to have a game where they can move one space each time, and that the households experience some travel costs, but that the demand for space is perfectly inelastic. In other words, there's a cost to go from one place to the next, but it's the same. It's the same whether they go from here to here or whether they go from here to here. So it's so their demand is inelastic, but there is some cost. It's like traveling a rail line, and the price is an area where the cost is all the same, whether you go one station or 5 stations, something like that. So we're going to play this game round by round. The price is fixed, that the amount of the good consumed is a constant, and that the marginal cost of producing the good is 0. So we're going to make those assumptions, and we're going to talk about, and we're going to assume that the firms are only allowed to move one distance space at a time. We'll see what they do. That's at round 0, they're at the ends. Round 1, let's say firm 1 starts here. Of course, that's their optimal move. Not shocking. And we're also going to say that they control the market. If whoever is closer in this game, whoever is closer controls that space. It's like you're controlling space. So this household is 2 units away, and here we're assuming. Well, here's the initial. The initial is the red firm is firm 1, the green is firm 2, and the blue is split. Okay, so that's round 0. That's the condition. Each one has 3.5, a market of 3.5. So then firm 1 moves and now does a market of 4, because now household 4 is 2 units away there. It's 3 units away from firm 2. So now household 4 is in firm 1's market area. So then we go to round 2. Round 2, firm 2's optimal move is to move one space. Again, this is not shocking. Now we're back to the original market position. The firms have moved. They're closer together, but they're now one market. They have the same market, but they're now moving closer than moving towards the center. And again, remember, the demand is inelastic. The demand with respect to location, the cost of moving, it's positive, but it's the same. That's the assumption here. So the demand is inelastic along the line. So for round 3, firm 1 again moves closer, and it controls 4 units again, so it's moving towards the center. From round 4, firm 2 moves again there. Of course, none of this is shot. This is all pretty obvious, but again, you want to put it down so you can understand the dynamics, understand the dynamics of what's going on. So now they're controlling. This is the initial control. And round 5, firm 1 goes to the center position H4. And round 6, firm 2 counters that. And this is what this is a Nash equilibrium. Were we talking about Nash equilibrium? This is an example of a Nash equilibrium. This is in fact Nash equilibrium. Because it's an equilibrium, the players have the players have are in a position where anyone that moves away is worse off than where they're at. So this is an equilibrium. This situation is an equilibrium, and they share the market because they both located at H4. Neither firm controls any location, but they share control with every single location along of the line, and that this is an equilibrium outcome, and it would be a Nash equilibrium. There's no incentive. No one has an incentive to move away from this. So this is the kind of clustering. If there's demand price inelasticity, if movement is inelastic, then there's clustering. So that is a case there. All households travel from their location to the central location to purchase the goods. So this is kind of what's going on with the Montesando. There's some kind of inelasticity that they're willing to travel that distance, so the firms cluster at the center, and they control the whole market, big control of the whole market. Now we're going to have, let's see, we still have a few minutes. Now under demand, the demand is elastic. So that means that there's some distance. Distance matters. There's effective distance. So what we're going to say here. Let's see. Did I put that assumption? Oh, let me go back here. Make sure I this assumption here. It is we'll assume that household demand in locations more than 1 unit away is 0. So the demand, if it's more than 1 unit away, the demand is 0, and otherwise it's inelastic. So it has to be within. So the location of the activity has to be within 1 unit of the household. If it's 2 units away, the household says, no, I'm not, forget it, I'm not going there. So that's this case, that's what's going on here. Then you could easily think of products where that's the case, so, so firm 1, more than 1 unit away, only controls these 2. Firm 2 only controls these 2. These 3, there's no market, the market doesn't serve them. It's not served by the market. There's no market for them. So firm 1 moves, and they control 3. Those are within 1 movement. Firm 2 still controls 2 units, and they can increase that to 3 by moving 1 unit, and they do that. Okay. And then in now so here, what happens here? There's actually the firm 1 could move here. It could move, but they still would only control 3. They're not better off. They're not better off. They're not worse off. They're not better off. And this firm, and if they do or don't move, this firm could move here, and they would control 3. Or they can just, this is an equilibrium. They're indifferent to moving. So it's actually, so they can move or not move. So this is an equilibrium. They're not worse off. They're not better off. They could move, but it doesn't matter. They're indifferent. So that is an equilibrium. And if they move here, it's still an equilibrium. There's still an equilibrium there. It's what you call multiple equilibrii. It's multiple equilibrium. There's more than one, but it's stable. they can move, but it's stable. Now let's just say that the third firm came into the market and they choose to locate anywhere they wish. Well, if they could in this situation, of this equilibrium, if it's like this, they could just plop down right there in H4, and they control one location and share 2, and each one of these firms controls 2.5. So this controls 2, these control 2.5 each. And that's an equilibrium. There's no incentive to locate. Now we're going to look at an example of, if we have time. It's getting late. I might just close here. Let's do this. Let me save this until next week, because then I want to go through this. We're going to have this example of monopolistic competition. I'll go through that. We'll pick up. This will be a good place to pick up next time, right here. Let me just go through this and see how much more of this. I think we're near the end anyway. Yeah, that was just 3. So we'll go through that. We nearly got through all of this material today, so we'll go through that next week. And you get to go home a little early today.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Am I a nice guy or what?
Yeah, you